Okay, at this early stage, you've already learned a bit about how credit scores work. Now I want to share with you something even more important, all the ways that bad credit can cause terrible harm to good people. Let me share a brief story with you. It's the story of Jack and Jim. Now Jack and Jim aren't real people, but their experiences are very real, maybe even familiar. If you're watching this video, you're probably not Jack. You'll see why in a moment, but you might very well be Jim, or you might know someone just like him. Jack is 23 years old, a college graduate, and a promising young engineer. He has a great job with a good company, and his future is bright. His buddy Jim is also 23. He graduated from the same college as Jack, and he works with Jack at the same company for the same pay. His future is also bright. All in all, Jack and Jim are almost identical. Unfortunately for Jim, their paths are very different in one crucial detail: what Jack's dad taught him. When Jack was 16, he and his dad had a long talk about the birds and the bees. And Jack's dad added something to the conversation that most dads don't cover. He figured since he had Jack's attention anyway, he would use it to talk to Jack about how credit works. Jack didn't tell Dad that the birds and the bees conversation was a bit late, but he did listen carefully to the discussion about credit. He listened, he learned, and he didn't forget. Jim's dad, on the other hand, just gave Jim a book on the facts of life and asked Jim to let him know if he had any questions. The book didn't cover credit, and Jim's dad never mentioned it. Now this doesn't mean that Jim's dad isn't a good guy. He's a good person and a good father, but like many of us, he just didn't understand the importance of teaching his son about credit. Jim and his dad always had a great relationship, and they often went hunting and fishing together. But to this day, Jim is clueless about how credit works and why good credit is important. Now fast forward to the present day. Both Jack and Jim have started to enjoy their well-earned success. They decided that the time has come for each to buy his first new car. Because they both come from the same town, went to the same schools, and work at similar jobs at the same company, they have similar tastes in cars. They've both picked out the same model. It's going for $22,750, everything included. And they both have $2,750 for a down payment. Unfortunately, their parallel tracks end right here. They are not going to have the same buying experience. Jack is going to enjoy buying his first new car, and Jim isn't. Jack has carefully managed his credit, just as his father advised. As a result, the sales manager at the dealership has just told Jack that his credit score is an enviable 750. Jim, on the other hand, has done nothing to maintain his credit score over his early adult life. Even so, he's tried to pay his bills on time. And as a result, his personal credit score comes in at 650, only 100 points lower than Jack's. It's not awful, but it's not good either. Here are the differences this 100 points is going to make. Both Jack and Jim are going to be financing $20,000 of the purchase price over the period of 5 years. And this is where the rubber meets the road. Jack's 750 credit score qualifies him for a nice low interest rate of 5%. and a monthly payment of $377. Jim's not-so-good score of $650, however, forces him into an interest rate of 8% and a monthly payment of $406. Ouch, assuming they both make payments on time and pay off their cars in 5 years, Jim will end up paying $384 more for his car in the first year than Jack pays for his, and $1,740 more over 5 years' time. If nothing changes, then these two friends will probably repeat this performance 10 times over the rest of their driving lives. If they do, the numbers become even more unpleasant for Jim. Here's a chart that illustrates Jim's financial pain. Over a lifetime of car payments, Jim is going to pay over $17,000 more than Jack. But the story of Jack and Jim doesn't end here. There's a lot more financial hardship in store for Jim. They are both smart and hardworking. As their incomes increase, each will decide that he could benefit from the convenience of a credit card. The credit card companies are always trolling for new customers, and it won't take them long to find out about these two up-and-coming young professionals. Jack and Jim will be deluged with credit card offers, and they'll do what most people do. According to national averages, they're each going to start carrying at least 3 credit cards. In Jack's case, his 750 credit score will get him an interest rate of only 9.5% for each of his credit cards. That's pretty good as credit card interest goes. Jim won't qualify for a rate anywhere close to that. Here's where Jim's 100-point credit score deficit will make a huge difference. He'll have to make do with an interest rate of 19.5%. But Jim won't be worried because he'll tell himself what we all tell ourselves in this situation. The rate won't matter because I won't keep much of a balance on the card. Unfortunately for Jim, what he tells himself probably won't turn out to be true. In fact, throughout their lives, both Jack and Jim likely will carry average balances of $3,000 for each card. This is about on par with an average total balance per person for the US population that carries credit card debt. Let's see how those balances and interest rates are going to work out over the long term. In this chart, we can see that the cost of that 100-point difference in Jack and Jim's credit score is going to cost Jim an extra $45,000 over the course of his lifetime just on credit card interest payments alone. Now, I know what you're thinking, this is really bad news for Jim, but there's worse yet waiting for him. See, Jack and Jim are intent on living the American dream. And as we all know, that involves owning a home. If they follow the average path, they'll both buy relatively small houses to start out and live in them for about 10 years. Then they'll trade up to bigger, more elaborate places with more amenities. They'll stay in these upper scale homes, pay them off, and live in them for the rest of their lives. So let's assume some average home price numbers. Homes might be going for more or less where you live. And let's take some historically average interest rates and take a look at the long-term consequences of Jim's credit score. Here's a chart covering his first home. Here we can see that staying in that first home for 10 years' time is going to cost Jim an extra $59,000 over the course of that 10 years paying mortgage payments. And then here's a chart showing the cost of his second home. In this case, with the larger mortgage amount, paying for 30 years to pay off the home, Jim is going to pay an extra $318,960, almost $319,000 more than Jack to live in the exact same home over the course of his lifetime. These are absolutely killer numbers. Over 40 years of home ownership, Jim will pay out a breathtaking $378,000 more than Jack to live in exactly the same 2 homes. In most places, that's enough money to buy a really nice home for cash and never send a single payment to a mortgage bank. Okay, at this point, we're almost ready to let Jim and Jack on with their lives. But first, let's review the total cost to Jim. In this chart, we can see everything we just covered, so let's review here. $17,000 plus in auto loans, $45,000 in credit card interest payments, $55,000 plus in the first home mortgage, almost $319,000 for the second home mortgage over the lifetime. That's a total cost for Jim's bad credit of over $436,000. Look, $436,000 is a pretty high cost to pay for poor credit, especially when you consider that Jim's credit isn't awful. It's just not as good as Jack's. But the reality of Jim's situation is actually even worse. Consider this. The $436,000 that Jim is going to need to pay all this extra interest isn't going to fall out of the sky. Jim is going to have to work hard at his company and actually earn all the money he'll be paying out in extra interest over his lifetime. If he had credit as good as Jack's, he can invest that money as he earned it instead of paying it through the nose to his creditors. Of course, he wouldn't do that with all of it. He'd probably spend some of it on vacations, hobbies, school tuition for the kids, a faster car, a bigger TV. You know, ratchet up the lifestyle a bit. But let's assume for the moment that he would invest all the extra interest in a retirement savings account of some kind. If Jim had invested all that money he spent on extra interest due to his low credit score, here's what he would have down the road, assuming very conservative investment rates. This chart shows Jim's lost investment value due to his credit score being only 100 points lower than Jack's. $1,051,882. Yes, that's the number, and it's a very great deal of money. Now granted, Jim would have to be a real saint to religiously invest every single dollar of the cost of his 650 score over his projected life. But this chart should give you an idea of the actual dollar cost of poor credit. Even if Jim had invested only half the money, he would have enough to live a very different lifestyle from the one that's in store for him. And he would have something left over to retire at a reasonable age in the bargain. In fact, that's exactly what Jack will do. And because they're close friends, Jim will have to watch Jack do it. In the years to come, Jim and Jack will continue working at the same company at similar jobs, and they will make the same money, but their lives will be very different. As time goes by, Jim will be left to ponder a couple of lingering questions. Why is Jack's lifestyle so much better than mine? Where does Jack get all his extra money? Did someone die and leave it to him? Is he stealing it? Why is Jack able to retire early and keep living the high life while I have to keep slaving away with no prospect of retirement in sight? This is going to be tough for Jim to take, and it would be for anybody. As their financial paths take the two friends further and further apart, Jim might not handle it well. This is the kind of thing that can lead a person to develop an ulcer from stress. Maybe their friendship will survive it, and maybe it won't. We'll leave them here and wish them the best of luck. Jim is going to need it. Let me know what you thought of this story. Are you more like Jack or Jim?